Todd, first off, just my thoughts and prayers to you and the entire Kraken family with the news coming down today. Away from hockey, you knew David very well, a friend of yours, and just away from hockey and what he meant to the Kraken in this city. Just tell me about him as a person, as a man.
Well, very unusual guy. And I think anybody that understood his journey realized he was so unique and how he led his life. And a big part of his life started here in Seattle. At the game tomorrow, we'll show a photograph of him as a security guard at the Space Needle. He attended the University of Washington for 4 years, left here, went to Harvard, studied Middle Eastern. He got a law degree at Harvard, studied Middle Eastern law. He went on a scholarship from Harvard to the Middle East, learned to speak Arabic, came back, practiced law, argued in front of the Supreme Court and won, and then got into investing. Knew nothing about it, but was invited by a family to run their family office. And just an amazing guy who saw the world just a little bit different than everybody else. And he was an incredibly interesting person to be around, but also a wonderful, kind, decent, noble man.
For the Seattle Kraken, what does he mean to this franchise?
Well, this took courage. It took conviction. So he started in a pretty good place because he knew this city and he cared a lot about it, because he did come back to the University of Washington and he chaired their finance committee. So he helped manage all of the university's investment portfolio. So when this idea came up, he was predisposed. And as people said, hey, this is really hard, that only got him more excited to do it, because that's his track record. He took things on that others didn't. He saw things different than other people saw it. And there was a lot to this. It took courage, privately financed arena, the biggest investment in the history of Seattle sports. He did it in partnership with my brother's company, OVGE. But it was his courage, his wisdom that drove us all the way to our name, our team name. He liked the name because the fans liked the name. And not everyone liked it. And he would often say, look, there are going to be some people that don't like it. But he was convicted to the idea. But I'll never forget the day where a design team brought the final designs, including the uniforms. And we loved it. It had this symmetrical S. And on both sides of the ice, it looked the exact same. It was classy, it was clean, it was dignified, all the things we wanted. And he stood up in that meeting, and I'll never forget it. He pointed at the arc and said, try an eye right there. And we had walked across hot coals to get to this point. And so I thought, oh my gosh, we're going to elongate this. I wasn't sure what I thought about it. That was the day that our brand truly came to life. And that is who David Bonderman is. Spoke last, but brought the most wisdom to a discussion. The other thing he did is he brought his daughter here. His daughter was involved in his affairs, and served on our board, but lived in Denver. And I think the day that Samantha Holloway came here was a day where he set his legacy in true place. She's magnificent. She is a chip off the old block. And our future is so solid with the Bonderman family. And over the last 3 years, we've seen this incredibly gracious, elegant handoff. And it was such a joy for him to see that and to see his daughter rise to the occasion. And she, make no mistake, is truly magnificent in her own right.
You kind of answered it, but I'll ask. Just, you mentioned his wisdom, and then you mentioned kind of how he battled through some challenges as you guys were building towards this franchise. But you've surrounded yourself with some pretty incredible people throughout your life. What do you take from David? That you watching him work, watching him kind of go through this process that you use now with your philosophy in life.
Well, first, I've never been anyone like him. His daughter, Samantha, is equally as impressive. So, and I think, when I think about Bondo, I think about a calmness, being deliberate, not allowing emotion to get in the way of rational decision making. But he had courage. We're in a facility here. The city of Seattle didn't have one sheet of ice in the city proper. He built one of the finest facilities in the country. And it was that kind of courage that was needed to do what we did. The arena problem had been going on a long time, and a lot of things left and things didn't come. And he was so fundamental to solving that. The design of the arena. He loved a lot of it, but he wasn't smitten with all of it. And he insisted we get a guy named David Rockwell involved, and it made this massive difference. So I have learned so much from the man. Today is a sad day.
Yeah.
The passing of what I feel is a true legend and one of the finest people that I've ever met in my life, much less worked for. But I think the sadness will be turned into a will to do what he wanted us to do, which was to ensure that our best days were in front of us. And he and I often talked about that, the best days of the Kraken, the best days of the arena. He was a huge music fan, but also setting the stage for the return of the Sonics. And those were all his dreams, and we're here to make those things happen.
He definitely loved his music and had some pretty good birthday parties with some pretty good guests at those parties.
He loved all kinds of music,
Yeah.
and so he liked rock and roll, but he liked all kinds of music and had appreciation for art. But music was his favorite art, and went to so many shows here. He attended probably more concerts than I have. He just loved it. He thought the building ended up being acoustically perfect, and that's what he insisted on. And in partnership with OVG, they did something pretty remarkable.
Todd, I appreciate your time as always. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.